My friends, I wanted to address you all in respect to the incredible, horrific events that have happened in Baton Rouge and then now in Minnesota. Another set of police involved shootings where black men are now dead. I want to encourage the men and women of blue who are tremendous officers. I have worked with police agencies across this country. I've been an assistant chief of juvenile probation, and in that role, I worked with 22 police agencies. We certainly know that they're wonderful officers. But my challenge is to my white brothers and sisters who wear the badge, who are men and women of blue. And I don't think that we're in a position now where we can hide behind the blue wall anymore. We've got to now denounce vehemently these senseless killings. I most recently saw a video that is not new. It's been surfaced around, but two white cops were able to get into multiple altercations with a white patron of a fast food restaurant. That individual wasn't even tased. There was no maximum effort nor minimum effort to subdue that individual. That individual lived. However, we're really living in a tremendous paradigm where there is a villain picture that's put on black men. I happen to be a large black man. I am 6'7", 300 and plus pounds. I happen to be imposing. And so certainly if I was in a certain position, I would be a victim. I've had negative experiences, negative contact with law enforcement. I never forget when I was a chief of staff for a state senator and I was stopped. Unbeknownst to me, I did not know that my license was suspended in another state. And then subsequently with the way interstate agreements are, my license in the state that I was in was suspended. I had no idea. And then the two white cops on I-95 said, well, let's see if we can lock up the senator too. I just don't believe that those officers would have said that if I was working for the powerful Senate president, the longest Senate president in America. I don't think they would have ever said that had he been driving with me. So my plea tonight, excuse me for being stumbling in my speech, but my plea tonight is for my white brothers and sisters who wear the badge, who are men and women of blue, to begin now to vehemently begin to combat this in your local agency. Speak out publicly. These lives that have been lost, whether a person has a criminal record or not, that has nothing to do with an individual whose life is snuffed out needlessly. There is an inequity of justice. There is still implicit bias. There is still a sense where black men are threatened, and it also almost takes us back to slavery days and the Willie Lynch letters when they talked about breaking the black buck. That's the sense that we feel now. And so there is anger. I want to encourage my brothers and sisters of color, don't tear down your own communities. Don't be destructive. Be constructive in what you're doing. But I'm reminded of our great mentor, the Reverend Dr. Andrew Young, former ambassador to the United Nations, former mayor of Atlanta, congressman. He always reminds us of this when he sits with us and we talk about the civil rights movement. He tells us that we would have never accomplished the civil rights movement if we hadn't had good white people. So my challenge, I'm imploring my good white brothers and sisters that wear the badge, the men and women of blue that happen to be Caucasian, will you stand up and begin to denounce some of these senseless killings? That doesn't mean that you're making a broad swipe or indictment for cops everywhere, but you can address bad police behavior. And this is happening all too often. And my friends, I think Ambassador Young really encapsulates it. We will never get anywhere until we get some good white people to join this. So certainly we as people of color are going to keep fighting. We're going to keep pushing. We're going to push the envelope in the policy end. We're going to be demanding justice. But my white brothers and sisters who wear the badge, will you stand up? Will you begin to say, this is wrong? Are we indicting all officers? No. But certainly this whole notion that not just Black lives matter, you ought to understand that all lives matter. And if we do hold to that mindset, if we do hold to that truth that all lives matter, then Black men's life matter too. 2 senseless slayings, 2 men that could have been subdued. And I even just talked to a police chief and mentor of mine who said even with the incident that happened in Baton Rouge, if the individual would have gone, or the 2 police officers would have gone and talked with the store owner, found out that the man had permission to be there, he would have walked away. It would have never been an instant. But we have cops who no longer know how to communicate. We have cops who have been trained so much in authority and power that they've lost the ability to relate. I was raised in Hartford, Connecticut with Officer Friendly. We didn't have a lot of Black cops on the force when I was growing up, but we had some good white cops. So that's who I'm addressing this to. My good white brothers and sisters, will you stand up and denounce wrongdoing? Guess what? We've all made mistakes in professions. There are bad lawyers, there are bad preachers, there are bad doctors, there are bad dentists. When they are bad, they are bad. But that is not an indictment on anybody. There are preachers right now who are not good, but that doesn't do away with the necessity of having men and women of God. And certainly that doesn't do away or negate the necessity for us to have men and women to protect and serve. So again, I'm imploring, I'm calling for my good white brothers and sisters. I know you, I've worked with many of you over the years. Let's denounce wrong behavior. Let's denounce just bad behavior, not giving an indictment against all cops, but addressing wrong when wrong needs to be addressed. And when we have that, when we have a time where white, Black, or otherwise, we see the tragedies that are happening, that's when we're going to make the most movement. So I know I sound like a broken record, but my white brothers and sisters out there, you've seen this. Those of you who have been trained, those of you who have gone through the academy and gone through supplemental training, you understand what I'm talking about. Yes, there's fear for lives. I understand a traffic stop is one of the scariest times for a law enforcement officer. But for that young man to be shot after obeying a lawful command, we can't justify it. We can't paint it away. And my brothers and sisters, in particular my white brothers and sisters, my conservative brothers and sisters, remember you didn't care about drugs until it started happening in your communities. So let's remember that these are Black men who are being shot. But what happens when we have a proliferation of young white men being killed? Will you be sensitized then, like you are sensitized now? Because heroin no longer is shuttered in Black and brown communities. Heroin is coming to your community. It's in New Hampshire. It's in Maryland and the Western Shore. My friends, do something. I'm sorry to ramble, but I'm passionate about this. My prayers go out to these families who have lost. But again, the struggle still continues. So my white brothers and sisters in blue, my brothers and sisters that wear the badge who happen to be Caucasian, please stand up and denounce criminal behavior, even if it's one of our own.